Welcome back to the Right Hand Revolution. I am so excited for today's episode. Today we have another interview episode with one of my students in VA 365, and we have today Sarah Fisher. I'm so excited. Sarah and I have had a long journey of interacting with each other and then finally coming into the program and then getting her business to in a really amazing place, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But I'm just so excited also for you to hear Sarah's story, because Sarah's story is really going to show you how, things happen in your life, right? There are going to be things that will always happen in your life and in your business. Life is always going to happen, especially as you're building a business. Sometimes I feel like it happens more when you're building a business. Sometimes it's very weird. And, how Sarah sort of moved through that and where she's at right now. So, Sarah, could you briefly just introduce yourself? Tell us where you're located. Tell us, where your business is at currently right now.
Yeah. Thank you for having me. I'm excited. I am in the US, in Utah, just north of Salt Lake. I actually started with my first client right at 2 years ago. So, yeah. And Rebecca and I were also just talking that I found her, or the algorithm found her for me on Instagram about 2 years ago as well. So I started taking in tidbits of advice from the very beginning.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. Sarah and I were talking in the DMs for a while, and she was one of those people. I think a lot of people, especially on Instagram, when you're not someone who creates content on Instagram, you think oh, commenting or DMing, probably everybody does that, and I'm not gonna matter. But no, Sarah was my one of my top 5 people. If I posted something, I knew Sarah was gonna be there. I knew her. I
Yeah,
knew her
some good
before we had
stuff.
even actually connected, right? So that's great. Okay, and tell us a little bit about, how many clients you currently have at the moment.
So currently, I have 4 clients. My target number would probably be 3, but I kind of had an old client come. Let's see. Basically, I had parted ways with my first client in January of this year. After a year and a half of working with them, they wanted me to come on full time, and I declined, which I do not regret at all. But then a few months later, they came back asking me to help kind of support them with some more work. And basically, it was too good of a deal to pass up. So I have 4 clients currently.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Great. Okay. And we'll go into more details around the clients and things in a second. But what I want to start with first is, how you kind of, like you said, the algorithm kind of served me to you. And you at that time, like you had said, you already had a few VA clients. So let me just also make that clear that when Sarah and I started working together, Sarah also did have clients that she had found, on her own previously. But I would love to know sort of your journey. So we were just talking right before we got on the interview about how, she was messaging me and then she downloaded something and then she came to a masterclass. So why don't you let's go back. Let's go back 2 years ago to that moment in your life. Tell me a little bit about where you were currently at. What was sort of going on for you then in your business, but also personally?
Yeah, so I guess the rewind would be I actually come from a healthcare background. And in healthcare, I was on the bedside as, a critical care ICU nurse. I want to say I left the bedside in 2021 when I was pregnant with my second kiddo. And then I started working from home, doing nursing stuff from home, doing case management utilization review. And so I had done that. Let's see, that was 2021, from 2021 to 2023. And really the case management stuff that I was doing, it was a great nursing job, a great job in the industry that's pretty, hard to get.
Yeah.
And had a great manager. And, there's a lot of possibilities of leadership promotion. And I just hated it.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
And yeah, a background to that, kind of read a little further, where I ended up pivoting out of healthcare in 2020. So during the pandemic, as an ICU nurse, I was pregnant with our first kiddo, and his name is Watson. So WTF are his initials, but
I think I
he
just realized that.
really.
I think
I love
so,
it.
yeah.
Yeah. We were totally those. Yeah. Anyways, WTF are his initials. But all that to say, he was born, and at about 36 hours old, we found out that he had a terminal heart condition. And so, once again, like as an ICU nurse, it's like I know way too much about
Yeah.
what's going on, for me to
Mhm.
have, yeah, I just knew, fully understood what was going on, and it was not a good picture. So we took him home on hospice, and yeah, he passed away at 6 days old. So that happened in 2020, and that's really what kind of instigated this pivot out of healthcare because I loved what I did previously.
Mhm. Mhm.
So that
Yeah.
I, did go back to the ICU after he was born, and then later on ended up working remotely from home doing healthcare. But it's like I kind of lost my capacity for empathy in healthcare situations. And then
Yeah.
also, I had been in a situation where I was really passionate about what I did. And then there was so much PTSD that even working from home would just like stir up stuff where I'm like, I don't have time to deal with other people's
Yeah.
trauma.
Yeah.
I've got enough
Yeah,
of my
for
own.
sure. Of course.
Yeah, so it's, definitely one of those life situations where, like, I did not expect this pivot at all, Lost my kid, and so much of my identity died with that, and it changed my relationship with my partner and my relationship with my family, and then I lost my career as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then we had our second kiddo, so my kids, so they're 13 months apart, so really back to back.
Okay. Okay.
And yeah, and so it kind of shifted like my personal healing. I was really focused on trying not to like mess up my second kid with our trauma and grief.
Mhm. Mhm.
All this ties into, me becoming a VA. It really does because it's like, you get further down the road and you realize you're doing this job that you hate. So
Yeah.
basically, I started looking online for other jobs. So I'm like, what can I do outside of healthcare? And I'm looking at operations and I'm looking at admin stuff and, I'm refreshing my resume and,
Mhm.
cover letter and all that stuff. We'll just say it only took a few renditions of resume and cover letter refreshes where I was like, screw this. So that's when the algorithm introduced me to Rebecca. So then I'm starting to like, as I start researching VA stuff, I'm like, well, like I can do it myself. And here's this girl saying that, like this is the way
Yeah.
to do it and everything else. So that's what I did.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, kind of like researched online. 2 years ago, I got my first client and I was still working like part-time in my nursing job. By the time Rebecca and I had our first like actual call together, I had 3 clients.
Mhm. Yeah.
And so then it started, an even bigger business growth, from that point on.
Yeah.
I think something I was kind of mentioning to Rebecca earlier that, for me, when I started out my VA business, I was really running from something. I was at this point in life where I was like, anything
Yeah.
else. I don't know what I want to do, but I want to do anything else other than healthcare.
Yeah.
Over the last 2 years, like, I've had so much personal and professional growth just intertwined where now I'm in a
Mhm.
spot where I'm like, I'm running to something and I'm
Yeah.
excited about and I know what direction I'm going. And it's like I've been able to connect with this new person that I am in this phase of life after, all the grief and trauma that I've learned how to hold because it doesn't go away. It's like you just learn how to
Yeah.
hold it. And then
Of
finally,
course.
you kinda lose yourself in it, but then I'm at a point now where it's like I've reconnected with myself, and the business growth has been a big instigator in that.
I think a lot of people don't realize that, right? So let me
Mhm.
ask you this. So earlier you had said, you needed something else to do. You didn't want to do, the nursing career anymore. So let me just ask you, first question is, did you ever sort of think that you would run a business? Like, did you ever identify with being like entrepreneurial or an entrepreneur? Because I think a lot of women come from a place where you were and they feel like, oh, I feel like I could do that, but I'm not like an entrepreneur. I don't feel like a business owner. How did you feel in that situation?
That's a good question. I had never really given it that much thought, I'll
Mm.
say, just
Okay.
because like healthcare is so much of an industry where it's like you're a nurse, you work in the healthcare industry, and like there
Yes.
are a handful of like nurse entrepreneurs, but it doesn't really scream like entrepreneurship like,
Totally.
you know,
Yeah.
graphic design degree might.
Yes. Yes.
And so I'll say for me personally, I hadn't thought about the idea of entrepreneurship as much as I had thought about the idea of leadership. And
Mm,
so I had envisioned myself going in a leadership direction in healthcare. And along with that, honestly, I'd also imagined myself working towards systemic changes in how we approach some things in like palliative and end of life care. So I was
yeah.
passionate about
Okay.
palliative and end of life care, before our kiddo passed away.
Okay.
And I
Okay.
still am, but in a different capacity now. So
Different
all that to
way.
say, yeah, I hadn't thought about entrepreneurship, but I had thought about like leadership and changing systems and structures in healthcare.
Okay. Okay. So let me then ask you this. So obviously, like you said, you went through a period, of course, of grief, and then you kind of, got pregnant with your second kiddo, right? How and through all that, you were still managing this grief process, right? I feel like you are still, right? Like, I don't know, does it ever, do you feel like it really ever goes away? I think this like management, we can go all into this. We could probably talk about this for hours. But my question is, how did you decide to do something for yourself? Because you had that stable job, right? Even though you didn't like it, but there was a lot going on for you personally. How do you feel like you were able to build your business while being sort of in that place of grief? Because I think that a lot of people would I feel like a lot of people might go more internal, and not feel like going and starting something like brand new as they're going through something like this. So what about tell me a little bit more about like
Yeah.
what that experience was like of deciding to start, your business, starting to find clients, building your business as you were still kind of especially in the beginning phase of building the business, processing the grief.
Yeah. Well, I guess, yeah, a tangent on grief, which obviously I have many.
Mhm. Mhm.
But yeah, with that, like, no, it doesn't go away. And I'll say, like, losing my kiddo was the first person that I had kind of in that, like, it was the first person incredibly, incredibly close to me, obviously
Right.
incredibly close to me, but that
Yeah.
had died kind of out of a standard, like, birth order.
Right.
And
Okay.
so, I had grandparents pass away at the end of a very long life, but no one else in my immediate tight circle die kind of out of that typical birth order. So with that, and even within my family, there wasn't much familiarity with this unexpected, you know, death.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because grief is very different in that capacity, where it's like for me with my grandparents, it's like, okay, I'm sad. I miss my
Right.
grandparents, and like, I named my kid after my grandpa. I was incredibly, incredibly close with them.
Mhm.
But you kind of have you come to a different level of peace sooner when it's more of an anticipated situation. But I think, it's particularly and my only experience with this, thankfully, is losing my kiddo, but that's not the kind of grief you get over. It's like you learn to carry the grief. And I guess like I mean, and I mentioned that for anyone listening of just that peace when you're experiencing something like this, like it doesn't go away. It doesn't go away, but you expand and your capacity for holding it expands. And that's just yeah, so all that to say, it's like it's all there. It's just
Yeah.
different now. Like my capacity is with it. Holding it is different. And yeah, so the grief tangent, I'm like, what was your other question from that? How
How
did
did you
I
build the
well,
business from that, right? Like, from
yeah,
that place?
and I guess to say I started my business in like what year is it now?
2025.
2023.
2023?
Yeah, I started my business in 2023. So at that point, it had been almost 3 years since my first kid was born, and I had an almost 2-year-old. So for me, I would say the first, like, 2 to 3 years were the hardest,
Okay.
and even, like yeah, the first year, it's just you're just in another reality altogether, and then
Mhm.
the second and third year, there's more of this, like, readjusting to life now. So, I wasn't in it's like big picture-wise, that's kind of immediate, but as far as those first few years,
Yeah.
it wasn't as immediate, I guess. I don't know, and once again, I think for me, if anything, the fact that I wanted to get out of healthcare was a pretty big catalyst towards moving into my VA business.
Yeah.
And that was motivating enough that,
Right.
I wanted
Right.
to do something different. And even like, when I told my manager I was planning to quit, she was like, "Oh, I knew you were going to say that." And so at that time, I worked 3 days a week, and she's like, "I knew you were going to quit." She's like, "I already talked to HR and all the heads of the department so that we can just keep you 1 day a week if you want."
Oh, yeah, right. I forgot you did that for a bit. Yeah.
So, yeah, so it's like the first year of my business, I still did work 1 day a week in healthcare just because I had a manager who set that up. She, told me from the beginning where she's like, "I believe in you. Like, you can do what you set your mind to. Like, you're one of those people that's just whatever it is you want to do, go do it." So,
Definitely.
I
Definitely.
don't know. And I
Okay.
guess, like, with that, there's still, and obviously Rebecca talks about mindset a lot.
Yeah.
Welcome to Rebecca Land if you want
Yeah.
to talk about mindset. But yeah, it's been a journey, and I don't really know
Yeah.
how I made that pivot, but sometimes you just have to want to do something different and want to try something different, just give it a shot. Like, I'd already lost so much, like,
Right.
if
Right.
anything, it has shown me where I'm like,
Yes.
this is all temporary. Let's just give it a
Yes.
shot, which is
Yeah.
it's a good thing to remind yourself of. Like, if you don't try,
Yeah.
nothing's ever gonna happen.
For sure. And that's why I was kind of asking you this was like I know that there are women that are listening to this who are going through a difficult season in their life, whatever that looks like for them. And I think that sometimes we can get so caught up in that we forget about that, right? Like that we can go for things and things are temporary. And if you want something bad enough, you can make it happen. Sarah built this amazing business from that place, right? So if you're in that place right now and you want to build a business and you're thinking, oh, I just can't build it right now because I'm going through it. I want you to really like reflect and sort of ask yourself, like, maybe this is actually the best time for me to go all in on this, right? Like everything else around me is kind of like, ugh, but what can you get control of? Ultimately, you can get control of how you create income for yourself. You can get control of the people you work with. You can get control of your business. And I know for me personally, that control aspect was really something that I really wanted in my life because I felt like there were so many areas of my life that were like out of control. And I didn't even have, a situation like you did, Sarah. So I can imagine that there are women out there that maybe they started their business and then something happened and now they feel like they're off track or they can't get back on track because they need to process this. But what I will tell you and what I've seen, not just with Sarah, but with other women in the program as well, is that some of the best businesses are born from that place. And I think having that strength just says a lot about you, right? Like your manager was saying, like, I know you're that person. I know you're the person that when they want something, they're going to go for it. And I know a lot of you listening are that person right now as well.
On that note, it's just that moment of, I think sometimes life is so overwhelming. You're like, I can't focus on myself. And I definitely, absolutely felt that way too. And I feel like for me, starting my own business gave me a very unexpected pathway to focus on myself, where it's like, okay, I need to work, I need to earn income for my family, but now I'm doing it in a way that forces me to grow. And that was really pivotal. I could go get a job, but and I had a great job in a zone that made me feel stagnant. So the shift, even at a time where it doesn't like logically seem like, oh, that's a good time to shift, it really propelled me in this direction where I was able to start learning who I was again and learning how to focus on myself and my own personal growth. And I don't know, that's been like the best part of all of this for sure.
Definitely, definitely, definitely. And now Sarah has all these new interests we're going to talk about, which I can't wait. So, as we were saying earlier, Sarah was talking to me for a while on Instagram and we were going back and forth. She was sending me DM here. She came to my masterclass, probably downloaded some stuff. So my question to you is, the entire time we were talking and we had, we were even like kind of like bantering back and forth, like you should join the program. And you're like, oh yeah, I'd love to join that. I'm like, no, you should come in and join. And, and you're like, oh. And then you would ask me a question like, oh, Rebecca, like, how do you do this? And I'm like, where we go over that? In the program.
But
So
I will
what?
say, even before I was in the program, you did use some of my quotes on the like, these are the successes from people, because
Yeah.
before I was even in your program, I had switched to like value-based pricing with
Yes.
clients.
Well,
And
yeah, you
so
took the
I guess it's
resources and you
like,
used them.
yeah, so I had some buy-in already
Yeah.
by the time we actually talked, where I was like, obviously you've got some tips that work.
Right, exactly. 3 clients later, she's like, yeah, I guess she knows what she's talking talking about. So what made you, what was holding you back? If you think back like a year ago ish now, what was holding you back from, coming into the program at the time?
Yeah. I mean, honestly, for me, a big struggle, like kind of a personal struggle, I would say I came from a very like financially illiterate, financially kind of negative mindset kind of
Mm,
upbringing.
mm,
With just very like just working class parents from a working class family. And, once again, it's like there's nothing wrong with that, but there was a lot of the just kind of the scarcity mindset type stuff. And then
yeah.
so a big thing for me was that willingness to invest in myself because my whole life, it's like making an investment in yourself, particularly financially, has
Mm-hmm.
seemed like, a threatening thing to do. So that's kind of another, that's been another grown of self development is learning and recognizing that it's okay to invest in myself. So that was one of my big hurdles, honestly, is that I had never, outside of going to school, but even when I went to
Mm-hmm.
school, like I did a community college route and I started with my associates. And then by the time I got my bachelor's, that was like reimbursed through the hospitals.
Interesting. Nice. Okay.
So, so it's like just the amount of financially investing in myself has been so minimal.
Yeah.
And like I would invest in plane tickets, lots of
Wow.
plane
Yeah.
tickets in my
Yeah.
20s and things like that. So that was a pretty big hurdle for me. And um, I don't know, that may just really be what was the biggest hurdle for me is that like fear of investing in yourself, which I'm growing through that. We'll just say. I've
Yeah,
learned over the last few
definitely.
months. I'm like, oh, I'm going to invest in myself
I
here
know.
and still buy more plane tickets. So,
And exactly. I'm the same
yeah,
way. So with that,
I
I
bought
think a
some last
lot of
night.
women, yeah, a lot of women have that mindset. I
Hmm.
did for a very long time,
Hmm.
for years when I had started my business. So I guess the question then is, so you had this mindset. What made you feel like, okay, I'm going to change this. I have to do this now. What was that sort of changing moment for you, if you can remember?
Anything I would say, I think it's that just like for me at least, you have to get to the point where you're like, okay, I'm gonna take a jump. And you have to realize that it's like, yes, I'm investing in this mentorship program with Rebecca, but I'm also investing in myself. And do I believe in myself enough to believe that I'll get something out of this investment? And I think it's just kind of that like for me, I don't know if I have a big pivotal moment. It was just like, deep breath, like, okay, let's make this jump. And I was already, I will say, like, in my situation, I already did have clients. So I kind of had that like proof of concept, where I'm like,
Right.
okay, I've made it this far with my clients. If I actually invest in myself, what can we grow to? And I think another thing that I realized pretty quickly was like, if I had invested in myself sooner, where would I be now? It's been a
Okay.
process.
It's been a process. Yeah, I remember the day we were DMing Sarah. So Sarah had purchased like a 1 hour sort of little session with me to go over some
Strategy
stuff that she
session.
is,
Yeah.
yeah, strategy session to go over some stuff in her business. And, I remember on the call just kind of being like, I really think you should come into the Excel. I really think this is going to make such a huge difference for you. And like, even after the call, like DMing you being like, so you want me to send you that link or like, are we going to do this? And then, you were just like, yes. I remember I was in Mexico at the time. I just remember being like, oh my God, I'm finally going to get to work with Sarah. Like, this is. I've been talking to her for so long. This is
Yeah.
so exciting. And to just have you come into the program and, really own your results, right? Because I think that's the thing too. Like, I think you and I are very similar in that, like, even if you did invest in something, I'm this way too. When I invest in something, like, yes, of course you want the result, but I'm a person that's going to get something out of everything I do, right? Like, I'm going to get something. I'm going to get some takeaway of like not what to do or like some sort of mindset shift. Like, I'm going to make sure I
Mhm.
get something. And when you came into the program, you came into it from my perspective with that mindset of, I'm fully committed to this. I'm going to make this happen. happen. I'm going to be like open and I'm going to be vulnerable and I'm going to really give myself to
Yeah.
this process. I've seen how this strategy works for myself without even being in the program. I'm going to fully commit to this. And, that is what you did. And very quickly, we started making, we started assessing the kinds of clients that Sarah had. We started seeing, where her mindset blocks were to maybe charging more. We really started almost like making a plan to kind of burn down the business she had created up to that point and like rebuild it back, better than ever. So maybe let's talk about that. So how was that? How was that experience of going through the burning down and the building back up?
Yeah, that is funny that you phrased it that way because a few minutes ago I was thinking, I'm like, it's definitely like even just talking about my life and career shifts in general, and like it's that like Phoenix moment of like burning it all down and trusting yourself that you're gonna have to rise up from the flames.
Yes, I love that. So tell me about the experience of that. Tell me what it was like to have a business that was, working ish, starting to see the areas that we need to make changes and then, actually moving forward and doing that. So like increasing rates and dropping clients that weren't aligned. Tell me how the last like year in your business has really been.
Yeah, I think a big shift, I think one of the big shifts when we started working together was that realization of what makes a good and ideal client, what type
Mm-hmm.
of businesses make a good client, and how that kind of changes the working relationship into something different. Because I feel like when I started out, I had one client that was, very steady and paid me very well, but it was incredibly just straight up task based. I was a person who did tasks in their business. Another client who, like I really enjoyed on a personal level, but her business wasn't in a spot where I could really contribute in a way that I wanted to. So
Mm-hmm.
that was a big shift for me, was kind of like recognizing who are the clients that me working with them in their business is really going to lead to growth, both for them and for me. Like, what do those businesses look like? And yeah, kind of working through that realization definitely led to some huge business shifts for me. And then, yeah, I went on Rebecca's first business retreat,
Yes, let's talk
and
about
participated in
that.
that. And honestly, it's like that's when my business did, like in the month after the retreat, that was my like it all burnt down and rebuilt
Yeah.
itself month.
Yep. Yep. And
So yeah.
we had to. So I love this little segue now into the retreat. So Sarah's overview of us working together was she joined the Virtual Assistant Accelerator, which is my sort of 90-day program. And then she continued in VA 365, which is what most women do because they want sort of that ongoing support as they're building the business. Last year, I had my very first ever retreat, My Girl Friday retreat in Mexico. And we had such a good time. And I think all the ladies had these kind of like moments where, like you were talking about, where, you kind of, it gave you, I think it really gave you a space to kind of take a step back and look at the business. So maybe I don't want to put, words in your mouth here. So tell me a little bit about this. So we were just talking about investing. So Sarah was nervous about investing. She joined VA Accelerator. Then she invested again in VA 365. And then she took it one step further and invested herself. Although there were plane tickets involved in that one. So maybe a little bit more of a draw, came to the retreat, which was a business retreat.
Yeah.
I'm assuming you had never been on a business retreat before.
No. Well,
How was it?
honestly, I had intended that, and I think this is something too, mentioning the 90-day program, and especially with me being in a position where I had clients already, I wasn't quite as like full throttle, like, okay, I have to find my first client. Like, I had my
Right.
first clients. And
Right.
so it was like more of like, who is it that's going to build me a different business that's more in line with the growth that I want? And so then actually, when it came to the retreat sign up, my plan that I'd written out was that I was going to sign up for the retreat if and after I signed a new client in August. And
Yes.
I was kind of went through the pitch process with a potential client, and thankfully we didn't end up working together.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
at the time, like, I thought I really wanted to and everything
Yeah.
else. And so I don't even know if I actually ever totally said yes to going on the retreat, but Rebecca just like knew where my mind was at and how much I love to travel and was like, you're going, you're going to get a client. So all that to
Yeah.
say, I had signed with a new client before the retreat, but
You
the
did.
timeline
Yeah.
was a little iffy. And so I actually, even with this investing in myself, like at first with going to the retreat, I felt guilty that I was signing up for it because I
Yeah.
hadn't signed a new client like I was supposed to. And granted, like, once again, I'd signed a new client before the retreat, and thankfully, like, that made me feel better about it. And
Yeah.
then, the retreat just led to just a huge change
Yeah.
and growth push where it's like literally I don't know, and then once again, it's like getting woo-woo. It's like the manifestation type stuff that came from that, like, group environment and the energy and really working on your vision and how your
Yeah.
clients can align with that, and just, like, writing that down and saying it out loud. My business 100%, like, just shifted in the following months where I was like, "I wasn't even planning on it shifting yet," you know? Like,
I
I
know,
thought
she's like,
this was
"Wait,
gonna
wait,
take
wait."
longer, and then it's like, bam, bam, like, you're parting ways with this client, you're parting ways with that client because you wrote down on this paper that you wanted to part ways with them, and now it's happening.
Yep, yep,
And
yep,
so, yeah, so we went on this retreat in November, and at that point, I had 4 clients. By the end of December, I'd parted ways with 3 out of the 4
yep.
because they weren't the right clients for me, and I'd written
Mhm.
down in my retreat book that they weren't the right clients for me, and just, like, things shifted, and it all happened much faster than I thought.
Yeah, definitely,
And
definitely. And it's
yeah.
hard, right? Like, it's hard when so much is changing, and, to Sarah's point, it's so funny because, yeah, we had all these plans broken down, month by
Mhm.
month. This is gonna happen in this month, and then we're gonna do that, and this is gonna happen in this month, and it literally all happened within, like, 1 month. But I actually think, I mean, obviously it
So
all worked
fast.
out. So bring us up to
Yeah.
speed. So what happened? So we went on the retreat in November,
Uh-huh.
and December happened, and then January, February, March was just like a wild ride for you. So give us a little overview of what happened during that time.
My gosh. Yeah, so much. Basically, like, I don't even know. So, going into the retreat, at that point, I had 4 clients, and one of them was a new client who I had just started working with. I work with her now, and she's just the kindest person ever, and
Yeah.
working with her is great. So, I had 1 new client and then 3 older clients that basically, like, by the end of December, I was parting ways with all of them. One of them was a project-based client, and our project was up at the end of December, so that was just kind of, like, naturally ended. One of them was a more, like, corporate-y client, kind of like a 20-person business
Uh-huh.
of the financial advising firm in the wealth management industry. And so they were going through a merger and wanted me to come on full time, and
Mm.
offered me a package with bonuses and everything else. Of course, was tempting because, there's a lot of stability in that. And then if I'm saying no, I was losing my biggest client. So I did say no, which means I was parting ways with my biggest client by the end of January.
Uh-huh.
And then the other smaller client that I enjoyed, it was just kind of a moment where it feels like, um, yeah, it just wasn't right. So we parted
Yeah.
ways. So that was December. And so then basically I started randomly like going through my list where I was like, "Oh, here's this person that reached out to me last month. I'm just going to send a follow-up email and we'll see what happens." So I sent this follow-up email. She responded within a day and was like, "Oh no, I basically, the timing doesn't work, circle back to me in a month." And then 48 hours later, she's like, "Actually, I just started working with someone from Belay and they're awful. Like I booked a call for tomorrow." So, it was someone I followed up with. They said no, and then they came back and said yes. And then she
Uh-huh.
signed a contract and paid in full, by the first week in January.
Uh-huh. How
And
did
we're
she
working
reach out to
together.
you? You said that she reached out to you. How did she do that?
She was a referral from
Okay.
another
Okay.
client.
Okay, from another client. Got it.
Yeah. So we started working together full time in February. And then at that point, I had like, a big client that I just parted ways with, essentially 2 pretty new clients after the holidays. It was a big adjustment period for me. And I kind of started getting a little like burnt out feeling in February because January I was making big pushes, and like I have a kid with limited childcare hours. He has like 24 hours of preschool hours per week. So I was kind of on Saturdays, I would go to the coffee shop and have my like personal business strategy sessions, which I really enjoyed because like, Saturdays I can't get distracted in my client's business. I could just work on mine. So I'd
Totally.
been making some big pushes to keep myself on track with goals. And so in February, I was just getting kind of burnt out. And so I had some people that I was sending pitches to and following up with, and it felt like I was, like, trying too hard
Mm,
because
mhm.
I was saying, like, "Hey, you wanna work with me? Obviously, you need to." They'd be like, "Oh, I do, and I don't." And it was ultimately, like, someone else who was nervous about making that investment in their business.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah, so all I'm saying is, like, the timing just didn't work out, so I kind of, like, gave myself permission to hit pause, and this is where, this kinda goes into my woo-woo human design stuff. So I've started, over the last year, like learning a lot about astrology, which has been a really cool, like personal growth tool for me. And then I had learned more about human design, and a friend got a human design reading for me, and we were talking about that. And she was saying, it's like, based on your human design, like you could just make these connections happen, like you're really good at making connections, they're going to happen. And I was like, well,
Mhm.
how does that work? And she's like, from your network, for you, these connections come or could come naturally for your network. Like that's how you bring it
Yeah.
in. So then
Yeah.
basically I'm kind of like burnt out and I'm like, okay, I have these two clients. I'm not going to make a push right now, but tapping into this human design piece where I was having a conversation with my brother-in-law in March and told him, I was like, he's thinking who in his network would be good for me connection-wise, and I'm like, I wanna work with a female client, I just enjoy that. I wanna work with someone with, like, a 1 to 3 person business with a really small team, and of course, like, I enjoy traveling and, like, social causes and everything else, and so I was very specific about who I wanted to work with, and of course, I'm like, thanks for the connection ideas, but, like, I'm not even gonna try to connect with someone
Right.
that doesn't feel right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So then all that to say, a couple weeks later, he sent me a connection. He's like, "Hey, I know this person who's a travel agent who's needing to start working with someone." And so we started working together in April. And once again, it was like, it kind of showed me too, it's like sometimes you're pushing and it's just in the wrong direction, or with the wrong person where it's
Totally.
like, you might work with this client, but they're probably not going to be a good fit if you have to push that hard. And then when you just like open yourself up to something new, I don't know,
Yep.
good things
Yeah,
happened. So sorry,
for
that was a
sure.
pretty long ramble on how that all unfolded.
No, no,
Oh, and
that's
then I guess the
great.
same week in April when I signed a new client, my, like, OG client came back to me, the one who had asked for me to work full time for
Yeah.
them. They came back asking me to contract with them again. So, of course, at that point, I'm like, "Well, yeah, because it's you, I will, but I'm gonna give you a higher rate, and I'm not gonna do as
Yep.
much work, and I'm not committing to any meetings." So,
Yeah,
yeah, so
no
then all of a
meetings.
sudden, like, April, it's like I have 4 clients, and I'm looking at my monthly revenue is, like, 9,100 a month. So yeah,
Yeah. So what was
it's
your
a big
goal?
jump.
It was you made a huge jump. Making so let's just highlight that because I feel like that was just like, oh yeah, now I make 9,100, like so nonchalant. So Sarah now makes $9,100 a month. What was your goal that you had written down at the retreat? Was it 8,000 or was it higher?
My goal
Did we write down a goal?
been I know I had gotten specific. I'd written down a goal that by the beginning of 2026, I wanted to make 10,000 gross per month,
Yeah.
and I
Okay.
hit 9,100 basically, April, May.
In April. Yeah, that's amazing.
So,
Congratulations.
yeah, so it got me, so I'm not actually at my goal for 2026, but it's
Not
pretty
yet,
dang
but we're getting there.
close
Yeah,
for
pretty close.
May,
And I
you
think
know?
definitely. And I think, Sarah and I
Yeah.
have been working now on kind of like a strategy on how are we going to grow the business to a place where Sarah can actually not work as much because as she mentioned, she has limited childcare hours and, one of the reasons you started your business was to be able to, have that free time and, be able to spend it with him. So we're working on a plan for that right now. So let me just quickly go back to the retreat for a second. I have one more question about the retreat and then I want to go on to, your bigger dreams and goals because I love talking about those too. During the retreat, was there any like can you remember, and I know this was a while ago now, but like Sarah said, she had never gone to a business retreat type thing before. Was there a moment at the retreat that you can remember where you feel like you had sort of a big shift or like a big aha moment on what the next version of your business was going to look like and the next version of who you needed to become to run that business?
It's a hard question because it doesn't feel like there's one, like, moment,
Mm.
It's more
Mhm.
just like there's this transformation that
Mhm.
happened. I think one of the things for me with the retreat that was really powerful, like I said, it was just like spending that time working on like what's the vision you want for your life and how can your business play into that and really spending time with that and like putting it down on paper.
Yeah.
And I think for me, it turns out like getting really clear on my goals and spending that time putting so much clarity and thought and intention to it is a really
Mm.
powerful thing. And
Yeah.
that's like what contributed to this big shift.
For sure. Yeah. Yeah. And, I think too, something I sort of witnessed with all of the women at the retreat was, and you had kind of touched on it earlier, like saying it out loud. Like starting to tell other people about it. Like, and not when it just comes to business. So, at the retreat, we were, of course, doing, business focused things, but we've spent a day, not even really focusing on business stuff exactly, right? Just focusing on what do we actually want our life to look like? What are we doing right now that's actually contributing to that? And we did an activity where, we said like all of these, like, well, if we didn't have any restrictions, money wasn't an option, like, what would we be doing? And we all read out, our dreams and our goals and everything. And I feel like to just be able to say those things out loud to people who understand and like know that you can get there and like believe in the vision also is just so powerful.
Yeah, just like the group of people where it's like they're working towards it too, and it's like, there's the saying and statistics where it's like you are, or you become who a version of like the five people you spend the most time around. So once again, it's like spending that time and just being in a community of women that are also working on moving in this direction and also like are there to believe in you and cheer you on. And it's like sometimes, you have those moments where you don't believe in yourself, but then you look around at everyone else in the room and you're like, well, they believe in me.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I don't know, I'm getting chills because it's like it's just that the power of community there, it really helps.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. For sure.
We even got to go on a call with, a handful of us from the retreat this morning, just kind of like an accountability catch-up call. And Rebecca's not like
Yeah.
involved in planning this at all.
Yep.
And just I don't know, it's just such like good community and it's really meaningful.
Definitely, definitely. And like you said, everybody's doing the same thing, which as an entrepreneur, when I was building my BA business, I never had that. I didn't have
Mhm.
anybody else that was, going through the same thing and just being able to be able to witness you guys having that experience. And like when I think maybe Kelly, asked, "Oh, do you mind if we have a little group that like we
Mhm.
meet like
Mhm.
that's not with you?" And I'm like, "Of course, like please."
Yeah. And I
I'm
will
like,
say,
"Yeah,
like, we
do it."
all yeah, we all too also, I think, kind of speaks to, like, the value of the women that come into this space, like,
Yeah.
of, the 5 of us from the retreat, we all have very different lives and very different kind of, like, things that we want and or need our business to do for us. So it's not even like we're all so similar, that's why we click. It's like, no, we click because 'cause we're all improving ourselves and we're all heading in the direction of our personal dreams, even though those dreams look really different.
Yeah. And so let's tie in the personal development piece to that. In building the business and getting it to where you've gotten it right now, what would you say has been sort of the biggest shift for you personally?
Having that, like, self-accountability of you're working on something not because it's, like, your job that someone's told you to work on. Like, you're working on improving yourself because you believe in yourself and want something different, I think is really, really powerful. And it's funny too because I, like, have talked so much about my professional development leading to personal development, and, of course, now I feel like I'm at a loss for words where I'm like, "I don't know, like, how did that happen?"
Okay, here's a better question. Where do you see it? Where do you see this like come? Do you see this sort of? Because I think when we think of personal development, obviously, I think everybody knows that like you kind of have to be a different version of yourself to start a business. But I think for you, this has come out, like you said, in so many different ways, not just in your business. So let's take the business, out of it for a second. Where in other areas of your life have you noticed sort of this sort of personal development really sort of like taking the lead now?
See. I think once again, it's like, and maybe this does tie back to business, but it's like, so much of the work that we've done, like with Rebecca, and so much of what I've done and looking at like optimizing my business makes me look a lot at like, how do I want to spend my day? Who do I want to be?
Yeah.
What do I want my life to look like? Not just what do I want my business to look like, but what do I want my life to look like on a day to day basis? And I think sometimes like staying in that mindset can be really valuable because instead of just like going through the motions or being bummed out that you hate your job, you're focusing on like, what do I want my life to look like?
Yeah.
And moving in that direction. So it's kind of that way. It's like, as you move your business forward, moving your business forward doesn't mean anything if that doesn't correlate with like moving yourself in a direction of living the life that you want to live.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very, very tied in together.
Yeah. Do you feel like it's more tied in than you thought it was going to be? Like when you first started the
100%.
business? Yeah?
100%. Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, I feel the same way. I sometimes I'm just like I would not be the person I am today if I hadn't started my VA business. Like just the human being level, not even the business owner version of me.
Yeah. And I think it also like it ignites something that was really valuable for me. It's like it ignites curiosity in other areas. And one of the things is like researching other businesses and seeing what other people are doing is really powerful. Working with other entrepreneurs, where it's like
Yeah.
instead of working for companies, now like I'm working with other entrepreneurs. And sometimes you're like, wow, this person is incredible, all the knowledge that they have. And other times you're like, I have that much knowledge too.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Like if they're doing it, I can do it too.
Yeah, yeah.
So, just kind of like being in that environment leads to some pretty big shifts.
For sure. Okay, so on those shifts, I would love to know. So Sarah has all kinds of big dreams, and as I mentioned earlier, we're trying to get her business to a place where she can hit her income goals while also starting to work on other things that she's interested in. So tell us a little bit about sort of those bigger dreams that you have beyond just, working as a VA. And I should also say that Sarah is more in an OBM role. I don't think that we mentioned that yet, but Sarah is sort of now more in an OBM role for most of her clients, if not all of them by now. Other than just, being a VA/OBM, we kind of use those words interchangeably around here. What are some other things that you have planned for the next like 5 years of your life that you want to do?
I've been in so many years of survival. I'm like, I don't know what I want to do. Like for me, when I was at that spot in life, I'm like, the ability to know what you want to do, there's a level of privilege that comes with that, because
Yeah.
when you're healing from trauma and when you're in the weeds financially, it's really normal not to know what you want to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
So for me, getting to the point now where I actually have dreams and plans for myself, that's a huge shift because a year and a
Yeah.
half ago, I did not. Like,
Yeah.
I didn't. I was like,
Hmm.
I don't know what I want to do. I want to do something that I'm not doing now. I want to do something
Yeah.
different.
Yeah.
And that's
Definitely.
something I still look around now and I'm like, oh my gosh, I have things that I want to do, things for me that I want to do. And it's just really amazing because a year and a half ago, I didn't. I wasn't in that place at all. Yeah. So what do I want to do now?
So what do you want to do, Sarah? Tell
So
us.
yeah, so
What are
on
your
top
dreams,
of
Sarah?
this, I've learned to invest in myself, and one of the things that I've enjoyed learning about, like along with astrology, is human design. And the first time I heard about human design was shocking on a business podcast.
Mm-hmm.
And it was
Mm-hmm.
talking about how, like, different human design energy types can influence how you interact and like where you thrive in business. And so that's something that I've enjoyed learning about recently to the point that that's like my personal thing now is I've enrolled in a like year-long human design course. So it's definitely a self-discovery tool, but also an avenue. Like at the end of it, there's, business components that I'm interested in tapping into.
Yeah.
Just in this way where it's like learning about yourself and about like the energy that you steadily have can be a good tool for, making some business decisions.
For
And
sure.
just kind of like learning, like, we make decisions in different ways, and sometimes it's not like a to-do list.
Mm-hmm.
We have
Mm-hmm.
different inner authorities that we make decisions from, and so for me, I'm an emotional authority. So it's not like, oh, you need to write out this to-do list. It's like, no, you need to like ride this emotional wave of like it's gonna seem like a really good idea and you're gonna be excited, but then you're gonna crash down and it's gonna seem
Yeah.
like an awful idea and you're gonna hate it. And then you might come back up, and when you get to the spot of neutrality, like 80% neutrality, it's like that's when you make the decision.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so that's an interesting thing to explore. And then my husband, he's a sacral authority. So he should just listen to like, what's his gut reaction? He doesn't need to ride this
Interesting.
emotional wave.
Okay.
It's like a gut reaction thing. And
Okay.
there have been very specific times in our life in recent years where it's like, he's been like, my gut response is this. And there have been times when we've done it and times when we haven't. And every time I'm like, oh, I should have listened to that gut response. But it's like we make decisions in different
Interesting.
ways. And so
Yeah.
instead of
Yeah.
thinking about like everyone like write out a to-do list, weigh out the pros and cons, like that usually
Yeah.
isn't the best actual tool for a lot of people to make decisions.
Yeah.
Yeah, so all that to say, it's interesting from a business component. So that's a current like another investing in myself zone on top of 4 clients and summertime and having a 3-year-old and everything else.
Yep.
And
Yep.
doing mentorship with Rebecca. Now I'm doing another course. But another thing that I want to do, and this is kind of ties into my personal story is that I'm really looking into avenues where I want to explore speaking and talking about grief and child loss and parenting after loss because that changes you.
Yeah.
But then also, I
Yeah.
kind of have that unique perspective coming from a critical care background environment where it's like not only
Mm.
did my child die from this, terminal heart defect, but also like I was an ICU nurse. So I wasn't in it long enough to be with like hundreds of people while they passed away, but dozens, and
Yeah.
just kind of walking with families through the end of life process. There's a lot there that I want to talk about. Just of like, one of the things would be like
Yeah.
our quantity versus quality. And I think sometimes, particularly in our society, we really look at like the quantity of time,
Yeah.
and when it comes
Yeah.
to the medical healthcare system, we look at quantity. We want to give people more time instead of focusing on the quality of what that time looks
Yeah.
like. And yeah, so all that to say, I'm, looking at getting into the speaking zone and kind of exploring opportunities of like, okay, I have this like kind of soul led journey. What can I share with people that you know, that would have been valuable for me at some point, and kind of like how can we instigate these conversations about grief and loss that are really valuable for anyone? It's
Yeah.
kind of interesting, like currently, I know it'll be different when people are listening to this, but there was a bunch of flooding recently in Central Texas, and that's
Yeah.
my hometown area. It's smack dab in the middle of it. And we weren't hit by this flood, but, like the town an hour away was. If the
Yeah.
weather had shifted, it would have been my hometown again, but, just, like, the degrees of separation and the devastation for so many Texans right now is so minimal, and, I wrote something the other day and, like, shared it pardon me, and shared it on social media, but then also this week, my clients happen to be from Texas and also have ties in the Central Texas area, and so I shared something with my client about how, like, what I wrote, it's like, "If grief has a superpower, it's this." And basically, it's
Yeah.
like grief can increase your capacity for love and appreciation in life. So I shared with the client what I wrote, and she's like, "I never thought about grief from this perspective." Because it's like we look at grief as this negative thing, and so what
Yeah.
I shared is just kind of like applicable timing wise, because so many people in Texas are grieving right now. But it's like grief isn't all bad. It's like let it change you. Let grief
Yeah.
change you for the better and let it change you in a way that you live a life that's, I don't know, just full of purpose and meaning and just connecting with those like little moments in life that are valuable.
For sure.
Yeah, so there's a lot about grief that I wanna talk about, and I'm in a place
Yeah.
now too, and I think a lot of something that I found interesting on social media is there's more people who have, like, lost spouses and partners that talk about grief years later, and even people that have lost, parents, but I think as an individual who's lost a child, talking about it isn't as common.
Totally.
And
I think
excuse
your
me.
voice is, like, so needed. If I remember the first time you told me about your entire situation, you had kind of touched on it a little bit when we were DMing, but when you actually gave me the full breakdown and how you were talking about it, and just even now, like when you were talking about like I can imagine you posting this on social media. It literally like gave me chills because I think that the way you think about it and the way that you frame it really is so unique, and I think that it's not like you're real about it, and you kind of have like a sense of humor that's like your personality that kind of like layers on top of it too. And I really do like I can't wait. It's so funny. So this is obviously Sarah's first ever podcast episode, but we were joking beforehand like this is going to be like her big break moment, that this is her first time, and like now when she's going to be like this famous podcast person, this famous like public speaker, she's going to like call me and be like, "Hi, Rebecca."
Yeah, yeah, it's
But your voice
exciting.
is needed. I completely agree. And I think that your
Yeah.
perspective is everybody has a unique perspective. But I think your unique perspective, like you were saying, because you were in sort of critical care previously, and then you had the experience
Mhm.
yourself, and then you went on and you built this business and you've been doing all these other things. I just think it's a story that's going to empower and help so many people through their own experience as well. And that you have to absolutely share it.
Yeah, and I'm really curious about where it's gonna lead. Once again, it's like there's people with a similar situation to mine that I can speak to. And it's like when it boils down to it, also like talking about your kid dying, that makes people uncomfortable. People don't like it. So it's kind of in that like taboo area of grief. However, it happens.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
there's a lot of people out there who've experienced, this level of grief, but also, like, once again, like what I shared with my client, and actually just pulled up what she said, but she said, like, I'd never thought about the flip side of grief, how it shows like our capacity to love and, care about others. And so it's like there's a lot that you can just in talking about grief from me having experienced it to the depths that I have. I've spent so much time there that it's like
Yeah. Yeah.
there's tidbits that you can share with people who they can still learn from grief without having to experience like, an earth-shattering loss.
Of course. Yeah.
So, yeah, and I think that too, tied it into business for me, like at this point, my first kiddo, Watson, he would be 5 this year. So it's been almost 5 years since he passed away. So it's like the timing of this, and some people will talk more on social media about their kid, like the first couple years, kind of as, that initial healing grieving process happens. But for me, it's like 5 years out, I can just talk about it from a different angle. And something that I've learned from business too, where it's like in my head, I'm like, instead of having this like perfect plan mapped out, I'm like, let's just start.
Right.
You don't have to have the perfect plan mapped out. Your plan is going to change. Just start. Oh, and I think
Mhm.
that's like another one of those zones where it's like the business development and the personal development overlap because you don't have to have a perfect plan mapped out. It's like just starting is what matters.
For sure. For sure. Yeah, definitely. Starting is the first step that so many people I feel like it's the biggest step, but it really
Hmm.
opens that door. And, like Sarah said, you just start. It doesn't have to be perfect. I speak to so many women who are like, "Oh, but I want to get clients, but like my website isn't like perfect yet," or "Oh, I
Hmm.
want to get
Hmm.
clients, but I just have to go get like headshots first before I." And I'm just like, just start talking to people. Like just start taking
Hmm.
action and like your business will build. And that's how anything else you want to do in your life
Right.
will build as
Yeah.
well. So how would you say that your VA business
Hmm.
has sort of helped you prepare to sort of chase these like bigger dreams that you have for yourself?
I mean, I think it's one of those, it's increased my confidence in myself. It's increased my knowledge of like the ways that people, make businesses and money and, you know,
Yeah.
things like that in the
Yeah.
world. Some of those like necessary zones where like in my family, I've been, the primary income earner. I make a larger income than my husband does. So, this isn't a zone where, like, this can't just be my side gig, this isn't extra play money, like, this pays our
Yeah.
mortgage.
Yeah. Yeah.
But, also, it's giving me that thing where I'm like, I can also pay my mortgage by talking about grief and finding
Yeah.
other things out there. So it's just like it's really broadened my exposure to what
Mm.
options I have.
Mhm.
And, it's like in supporting other people in their business where it's like, I feel so invested in my clients and in the success of their business. It just, you learn a lot about business and I don't know, just kind of taking the leap and doing
Yeah.
it instead of, yeah.
Okay, so this is a great segue into my next question. Has there been a moment recently? Because, obviously Sarah got these clients and like she said, she was kind of in this like burnout zone a little bit, but then
Mhm.
she kind of got back, got out of that and then got it on track again. Was there a moment in the last few months where you've like taken a step back and realized like, I've actually done this. I've actually hit my goals. I've actually built the life that I've been wanting to build for the last, few years at least.
I think it's funny you say that because it's like you kind of see tidbits trickle in. I'm like, oh, I'm doing it. And one of the examples, like literally from this week, one of the things I'd written down with a goal was like wanting to spend more time with my like closest friends, and we live in different zones in the US. And these are like my, ride or die people. And so yesterday I was like looking at my schedule. I'm like, oh, like I want, this friend to visit me, but I know her schedule's crazy. And I'm like, I'm just gonna buy that plane ticket. So, it's like I'm bought plane tickets for me and my kid to go visit one friend for her
Nice.
birthday. And then I'm looking at my other friend, and it's like one of these people's in Texas, one is in Hawaii. So I like bought plane tickets to
Wow,
Texas.
right.
And then I'm looking at one like, okay, well, for her birthday, I'm gonna go in and buy plane tickets to Hawaii, And I actually haven't even told my friend yet that I bought plane tickets to Texas for her birthday.
Surprised.
Yeah. Well, and I was looking at it last night. I'm like, well, should I text her about visiting me? And I'm like, no, screw it. I'm just gonna buy those plane tickets. And so it's
Yeah.
like little things like that where you're like, oh, my life has shifted. I'm doing some of these things that like, just that I wrote down that I wanted to do and it's happening. And then
Yeah.
also being at
Yeah,
this business shift where I'm looking at like expanding my team and having like a team of people support my clients, that feels really, really exciting because then it's like, okay, if I have a team helping, I can do, more of these things that I'm interested in doing as I grow into these new versions of myself.
for sure.
Yeah, so it's like it just shows up in different pieces, where you're like, oh,
Yeah,
it's happening. It's happening again.
the little
My business
moments.
is building the life that I want.
I know,
Yeah,
you're like,
for
"Oh, this
sure.
actually works. This is
Yeah.
amazing." Okay, so to that, what would you tell the version of Sarah from 2 years ago who was just starting out? Because there's
Invest in
probably a lot
yourself.
of women. Yeah, invest
Yeah,
in
it would be
yourself.
invest in yourself now, basically. Yeah, really, that's it. Don't be scared to invest in yourself now because you can do it and, you're worth it. And yeah, that's what it boils down to.
So for any women listening right now that are in that place that you were at 2 years ago, and they are worried about investing, they're right on the edge of starting, what do you want them to know? Maybe they even have, a smaller client, but they're still, not right there yet to take that next step. What do you want them to know?
I mean, I think there's the idea, and this is something that I struggle with. It's like I really have to fight to recognize when like my brain wants to plan every step out perfectly. And it's kind of like sometimes your brain wants to know like that you're going to be successful at something before you even get started. But it's like success isn't going to come until you get started and unless you get started. So when you're worrying about the fact of like, could I do this? Can I not do this? Is it right for me? Is it not right for me? You're never going to know unless you get started. And that's how it works. It's like you're not going to be successful and then get started. You're going to get started and try something new, and that's going to lead to success. And also, something that like I was actually journaling about this last night where it's like maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. Like, or maybe you do something and then maybe you change your mind and you'd want to do something different. Like, that's okay, but you're never gonna know if you don't get started.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I was just talking to somebody the other day who was saying, I think the VA space, I think I could do it, but I also want to have like this business or this business. And, I think that to that point, a lot of women who come into the program, just like Sarah was saying, a lot of women who come into the program, it's becoming a VA is just a stepping stone to something else. And I think there's like a quote from like Michelle Obama or something, and it's like, I never asked my kids like what they wanted to be when they grew up because I knew they would be so many different things that I didn't want to keep them in one
yeah,
thing, right? Have them pick that one thing. And I think a lot of us were sort of taught to pick one
yeah,
thing, do it for the rest of your life, and if you don't do it for the rest of your life, there's a problem, right? Something's wrong, you
hmm,
weren't successful at it. But that's just not the case. And I think that, like as Sarah was saying earlier, once you get into this space and once you start speaking with other entrepreneurs and other women that are doing the same thing, you start seeing how much opportunity there is for you to do everything that you've ever wanted. Not just
yeah.
one thing, not just build one business, build as many businesses as you want, work with as many people as you want, do a human design course, right? Like do all these things that you want to do because you can.
Yeah. Well, and like it's okay to pivot. It's okay to change course. And I think that can be really hard, but sometimes life forces you to pivot and change course. And sometimes, but also it's like we can't be our own roadblock, where it's like you just have to go for it and figure it out along the way. And we all have different things that we want and different reasons for doing it. And I don't know. That's the fun part about life is you can change and do new things. I don't know. I think that's something actually that our generation does really, really well. And another on that note, I read something the other day that was talking about like more and more women leaving the workforce. But the kicker,
Uh-huh.
it's like women are leaving the workforce to do their own thing
Right. Yeah,
because
yeah, exactly.
they know that being defined by, these 8 to 5 jobs, there's so many
Yeah.
better options for them.
Yeah, for sure. For
And
sure.
yeah, like entrepreneurship definitely will show you that.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, on that note, is there anything else you want the listeners of the Right Hand Revolution to know before we wrap up? Anything else you want to say or share?
It's just for anyone out there who is going through a big life change or is learning how to like carry grief and, is trying to find yourself and figure out who you are. I think entrepreneurship can be a really great journey for that. And you learn so much about yourself, and you just have to trust that, like, even if you don't know who you are right now or what you're doing something can really move you in a positive direction. I don't know. It's just, there's a lot of power in moving forward and doing something, even if it seems like the timing isn't good. And even if it seems like life is too much.
Mhm, mhm.
Moving forward, there's a lot of power there, and Rebecca believes in you, I believe in you, and being surrounded by women where, like, it's not about competition, it's about cheering each other on. It's like there's just so many good people out there that are going to cheer you forward. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
We
I
all
love
we
that.
all can
I
believe in
love that.
ourselves.
Yeah, we have to. And, getting a little bit of belief from other people isn't too bad either, you know?
Yeah, yeah. Actually, on that note, I don't think I've told you this, on the retreat, you gave us these little bracelets, and
Yeah.
then I bought a bracelet that matched it on the beach, and when I put these bracelets on, like, what I kind of like the little mantra that I associate with this jewelry is that, like, one of the bracelets is like, "I believe in myself," and then also it's like, "I have other people that believe in me as well." So
I
that's my little,
love
like, mental
that.
association every time I put those bracelets on, and, like, sometimes I'll wear them on calls that I'm nervous about where it's like, "Okay, I believe in myself and other people believe in me," and just having that, like, joint power, it
I
really
love
changes
that.
things.
I love
Yeah.
that. Thank you for telling me that. Oh my god, that was like the best way to end this episode. I love that. I need something like that. Okay, well on that note, thank you so much Sarah for joining us and for sharing and being open and vulnerable as always, sharing your journey. I will keep everybody posted. I feel like I need to do like an updates episode on all the interviews because every interview we've talked about like what the person's doing next
Mhm.
and then I just leave like this huge cliffhanger for everybody. So I will do an update episode at some point and I'll go over, where Sarah's at, like how her human design journey is going.
Awesome.
I'll
Well,
go over all of that.
I'm making tiny steps. I'm not ready to, like, launch into my speaking zone
Okay.
yet, but I did make an
Okay.
Instagram for myself that's called, see if I can remember it, "With Sarah Fisher," where I'm
Ooh,
gonna start
okay.
writing about grief and everything. So, "With Sarah
Okay.
Fisher." Yeah.
Just in time for this podcast, go and follow Sarah. Okay. I
'Cause
love
at some
this.
point, I'm gonna be writing and sharing all my stuff. I'm already
Yeah,
writing it,
you can
but
get her
I'll be sharing
insights.
more soon.
Well, now you got
So,
pressure because now people are going to be following you.
yeah, yeah, it's okay.
All right, Sarah, have an amazing day. Thank you so much, and we will connect soon.